Welcome back to the Flyers Nitty Gritty podcast, getting gritty with it with your host, Yariv and Wolok. My partner in crime, Jamie, continues to be a no-show. However, I got my co-star here, Chris Maher. Chris, welcome back to the show. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, man? How are you? I appreciate you having me on. Jamie, you stink. I am feeling a little bit under the weather, so I apologize if my voice is a little different sounding. But I'm excited to come on and talk some Flyers today.
You know, it's appropriate for the situation that hockey is in. So I think your tone of voice will, I think it's a perfect tone setter for how we feel about the season. Let's start it off with some positive stuff first, and then we can get into the negative. So you actually just had a pretty good video, right, with Alexander Appleyard, because Cam York just had a game, and it was streamed online, and people got to watch some of it. I'm going to defer to you on this one. And Cam York, everybody, I keep talking about Cam York over and over again. So let's see. What do you think? You got to watch him. Just so everybody's aware, there's also a video for Chris that's available at Flyers Fan Mania, right? On YouTube. 93, with Appleyard. It's done well, so go check it out. It's going to add to this. But Cam York, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, so me and Alex, we did the video after the first game. They played Arizona State. They played 4 games, and they're 4-0. I mean, Michigan is unbelievable. So much talent on their team. But that game in particular, it was their first game of the year. There was a lot of rule changes with NCAA hockey. They shortened the intermission time to 12 minutes. There's only 1 media timeout now instead of 3. So the game was short. I mean, it started, I believe, at 3 o'clock and it ended at 4:45. So it was a shorter game, but
commercials.
It was a total blowout. So it ended 8-1, and it was 8-0 at one point, and then Arizona State scored in the last 2.5 minutes. So it was a blowout, but it was entertaining for me to actually sit there and keep my eyes peeled to it because it's so fast paced. And Michigan was just insane. But as for York, he had a really good game. He had a goal and an assist that day. And I believe the next day, the next game, I think he had an assist or 2 assists. I can't remember. But so pretty much when I did the video with Alex, we had kind of talked about how York had played. We talked about a couple other guys. And I think the biggest thing that we kind of realized is that Michigan was they were incredible. I mean, they have so much talent on that team, from guys like Owen Power, obviously York, Kent Johnson. I mean, they have 2 guys right now on Power and Johnson that honestly, some people have them ranked top 5 in next year's draft. Both of them to go top 5 in the 2021 draft. They're stacked, they're loaded. But I feel like the one thing I noticed with York is that his skating and his puck moving is unbelievable. I mean, I'm sure you obviously saw the clip of the assist that he had. That was insane, where he kind of did the little pushback and then threw it over on the backhand. He did that a lot at times. He was really confident with the way he just moved the puck up the ice. And I noticed that a lot. I think, honestly, him and Keaton Pearson, who was his defensive partner, who they've both continuously played first pair for the first 4 games so far. They haven't really switched up the lines on defense. They did a little bit on offense for some of the games. But for the most part, I mean, they only had a handful of plays where they were caught. I know they did have a 2-on-1. They also gave up a 3-on-0 at one point because it was a really bad change by the offense. The D went to change, and then it was just a whole miscommunication, and it was a 3-on-0. And see, the good thing was that no harm was done, but really that was it. I mean, I think York maybe had 1 turnover where he kind of put his forward in a bad spot in the first, but that was really it. As for the second game, Can
I ask you something there, Chris?
Yeah.
On that play, did you watch his recovery from it?
Yeah, he recovered and then got the puck right out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was one of those plays where it was along the wall, and as soon as he threw it up, but he fanned on it, and there was already 3 Arizona State guys there because the 2 forechecking and the center that came. It ended up going back to him, and he kind of just threw it, and it was on the left side wall at the time, and he just threw it across the ice to his D partner, and it went right out. So it was kind of a broken play, but he was able to recover from it.
I feel like that's what's important there on that play. Even though he made the mistake, could he recover? Because it's all the time people say that stuff about even like Provorov, you know, like they'll like focus on like a flub play or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you got to see all the work that he puts when he gets back. The fact
Right.
that he shuts down, cuts down angles, maybe disrupts the play. Like all that stuff's important because you're going to make a mistake. You're going to flub the puck every now and then. It just, it happens.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I feel like that was maybe really the only time that happened, too. I think he kind of learned from that because that was early in the game. I mean, and plus, that was still their first game of the year. I wasn't really too worried. And again, and then they also had that 3-0, and that was it. I mean, that was in the second period, but like the whole third period, they were just absolutely killing them. I mean, the
8-1. 8-1's a shellacking.
Yeah.
You know?
I think they ended the game with 35 shots on goal.
Yeah. That's it's obviously a tough game to be like, oh, you know, Cam York is going to be the backbone of your D because his team dominated 8-1.
Right.
But you know, like you said, it's a really good team versus a team that maybe is not even ready to play that level of talent, especially
Right.
you know, when you got a couple guys that you're saying could go in the top 5. Listen, I think overall, though, what you look for is, though, it's the same pattern of where he came from in the U.S. program, right? Like, was that team short of elite talent? No, it just seems like he complements elite players really well.
Yeah.
So maybe that's kind of the thing to take away from a game like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, and honestly, just kind of going off what you said with all the talent, too, I mean, they have so many other guys like Thomas Portolo. I think they have 6 NHL prospects right now, including York. I mean, they have Johnny Beecher, who's obviously we all know who's unbelievable. I mean, they have so much upfront talent. And the one thing I noticed the most was him on the power play. I mean, the way he moves the puck along the blue line on the power play is just incredible.
Yeah, dude. Well, and that's the thing. I've mentioned this before, is that he always has kind of like, people dare not compare him to these type of players, but even like, you know, Quinn Hughes and all that. I mean, you're seeing what makes a player like Hughes successful in the NHL. Those skill sets are available for somebody like York as well. Maybe he won't hit that same level, elite skill set, maybe skating and the offensive ability, but he's probably not too far behind, you know?
I mean, and it's because Alex was kind of saying he always thought of him as a really good, solid number 2 defenseman in the NHL, and I can really see that.
That's what I see as well. And
yeah,
again, if that's how you project him, I mean, he could be better than that, because if you think about it, that was the projection for a lot of, you know, I'm sorry, not the projection for a lot of defensemen that are top pairing defensemen. So, you know, as long as he continues his track, it's all about, are you a guy who can eat up 23 minutes a night? Are you a guy who can play against best players in the world? Are you a one? What is a number 1, right? We know what a number 1 is, right? But they're so hard to define as well. It's usually like, there aren't enough to go around. There aren't 30 number 1 defensemen in the NHL. So a guy just of that caliber who can play that type of role, I think, is just a huge win, right?
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, like, I think the thing is too is that it's so hard because there's like and kind of just going off your point, like there's only a handful of like clear cut number 1. Like it's guys like Roman Yossi, Victor Hedman, you know, John Carlson, Petrangelo, Torrey Krug. I mean, like, and those are just you know.
I wouldn't say Torrey Krug's the number 1.
No.
No way. He wouldn't have been allowed to walk in free agency. They didn't even really try to keep him that hard. I mean, Petrangelo went like.
I feel like he will be with St. Louis.
With the crop. No, I think they're gonna split it between him and Parayko. Like, I wouldn't say. I don't see Torrey Krug as a clear cut number 1. I never have. No.
Well, I mean, I guess. I mean, I was kind of just thinking like, off of the whole free agency list and everybody that was saying. Yeah. And with the whole thing with
he's very good.
Yeah. And I think I mean, if anything, he's a number 2, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that argument for sure. Like, that's what I mean. When I say number 1, I mean a guy that, like, literally you can count on in all situation to be your best defenseman.
Yeah.
And I don't see Torrey Krug as being that guy. Where, like, I'd rather have Parayko out in the defensive zone than I would Torrey Krug. Mm-hmm. You know, that's why Provorov is our number 1.
Right.
Because there isn't a scenario where he isn't the optimal.
He's also the only one who can do that on our team too.
But that's my point. There is no scenario you can't put him in, and he can do all of the things. Sanheim is on his way to work to that mold as well, and I would say he has very similar features, but Provorov just proved to do it immediately.
Right.
But yeah, I don't see Krug as like a defensive shutdown guy. Just like my criticism of Carlson is like,
Carlson?
Yeah, it's like, don't get me wrong, he's an incredible offensive defenseman and play driver. He's a good defenseman. He's not the number one guy on his team. Like probably Vlasic probably plays tougher minutes still at times, or even Brent Burns has very similar minutes. They don't have like that true number one guy like a Victor Hedman, or I would still say Drew Doughty. I know people don't agree with that, but yeah, totally number one.
I don't know who else would be in that position.
You can put him in any scenario. That's the idea, and he can excel in all scenarios. That team struggles immensely overall, so blaming it on the number one defenseman is definitely not gonna. I don't think that's very warranted.
No, I don't either.
But Shea Weber is a guy I see like that. I know he's towards the latter half, but definitely during his prime. Ryan Suter. These are guys who did every element of the game. Roman Josi, I think, was a good example as well. Like PK Subban, no.
No, yeah. I was just about to say Subban. He's like
not elite defensively.
A clear-cut number two.
Yeah, he's good. He's good defensively. He's not. I wouldn't say he's something to scoff at or throw away. And that's the knock on like the Flyers D is that we don't have enough guys who are. That's what we need Niskanen for, right? It wasn't a number one, but he was a very balanced defenseman that he was very good at everything. Should be interesting. So let's get into it, actually. That's a good segue. Let's talk about defensive pairings. Anything change in your mind over the past few months? How are you still looking at this top 8 walking into the season?
I mean, I'm still having my eyes set on kind of what we did when we did the video for my channel. I still have Provorov most likely with Sanheim. I personally think they should use Ghost at the number 4. Honestly, I think you could put Ghost with Myers.
Okay.
I think because one thing I think Ghost needs to have, if they're going to use him, which I know we've talked about this before, whether it was on camera or just on the phone, I feel like they need to use Ghost where like literally if he messes up, he needs to play, he needs to get minutes. Like they can't just use him where like, oh, if he messes up, he's not out there, or if he messes up, he gets like sent to Lehigh Valley or something. But obviously, it's a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but you get my point. I think if anything, I feel like Gustafsson as of right now is probably nothing better than a 5. So I think the 5 is probably the best spot for him. And then I'd probably say you just put Braun at the 6. Have Gustafsson with Braun, Ghost with Myers, and
so you give Ghost the edge over Gustafsson at this point in the lineup. Interesting. That conclusion. I
mean, from really from everybody else's eyes, everybody's saying that Gustafsson isn't great defensively, and actually they're not even saying that. They're saying he's not good defensively at all. But I mean, I don't think Ghost is terrible at defense, but he's not great either. But still, I don't think he's bad defensively either. I still think he can still play defense. It's not like he can't play defense. But as for like the 7-8, I think it's got to be Hag and Freeman. And it's funny too because like before the Gustafsson signing, I honestly thought that Hag was going to get his like consistent shot because I feel like he's always like that one defenseman that like he's always getting screwed by like one guy. Like he's not in the lineup one game. Like I feel like he's never in the game consistently like every night, which I'm sure that does like get annoying at times. Because I feel like again Hag had a really good year, and maybe he could, he could maybe battle out Gustafsson for that spot if they need a physical game or something like that at that time, depending on who they play that night, whatever. But really, I think the biggest question everybody has is who's going to be the number 2. I think it's Sanheim, and it's funny because I feel like there's a lot of people that just don't think that some of these guys are going to just like everybody's just going to stay where they are after the season. Like nobody's going to get better, which I kind of find ridiculous because I feel like most of these guys are going to play a lot better. I mean, I think Provorov is going to do a lot better than what he did. I'm not saying he was bad. I'm just saying I think he'll have a very good season. I think Myers and Sanheim will both be better. I don't really think. And then really I think if you think about it, the only guys you really have to worry about from there, because I feel like everybody knows they can kind of count on Braun for what he does in the minutes he gets. Same thing with Hag. I think the biggest question is what can Gustafsson do and what can Ghost do if they use them both right. But I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, there's the long time off. It's gonna be interesting because I mean I completely agree with you. My thought is that these players were brought in to grow and to evolve together, and that we should expect more out of them every season. Not dramatically more, but even like 10% more,
right,
but better. A constant progression in their development, right? And that's the majority of players. So now, Gustafsson and Ghost are both the wild cards, right? It's interesting because we don't know exactly what role either one of them are going to play on this team next year.
Yeah.
A guy like Haig is a little bit one-dimensional based off of his game last year. Could he evolve and become more offensive? Then I would say Ghost is definitely in trouble if that ever happens to Robert Haig. But Haig right now is kind of more of a defensive guy. Braun, a defensive guy. That really leaves you with the top three guys that we're talking about, which is Sanheim. I guess Friedman as well. You can't assume he's going to jump into the top four. I'm not saying it's impossible, but realistically, that's not where his chance is going to be given.
Right.
But if you look at the top three guys, now, is Sanheim the number 2 on this team? I don't think that there should be any question. Nobody should be doubting Sanheim's role to this defense. It's Provorov, Sanheim, and then I would say everybody else. You can make an argument it's Phil Myers. So Phil Myers is your number 3. This is the only thing I see an issue with Provorov, Sanheim, is that your second pairing defenseman or second pairing will be severely weaker than it was last year. And that's where the one thing where I would look to be like, okay, can I rely on Sanheim carrying that second pairing? Or if I put a guy like Ghost with him or Gustafsson, can he compensate for their play? Or, and then can I hope that Myers gets better and that Myers takes that spot? Having said that, I think they're going to play around with every combination, including what you're saying.
I think that's going to be the same with the offense, too. Because I feel like last season...
More with the D.
Obviously more with the D. But it's going to be more, I think, with the defense because, again, you kind of have this, somewhat of a hole as of right now.
Well, it's like losing Kevin Hayes.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think the thing is, too, is that we saw a lot last year where, the offense was completely different at times. We saw it in the playoffs. We saw it from, the regular season all through. I mean, Hayes and all them guys played second, third. I mean, JVR was on the fourth line at times. Obviously, we all know that. But I think it's going to be more with the defense this year because I think if they have, inspirations that Patrick and Lindblom will be healthy. I mean, we pretty already much know that Lindblom's going to be coming back from playing in the playoffs and things like that. So I think if they know with Patrick, then we might see a little bit of a shift in the offense. Probably not as much, though. I think they might try to get some more stagnant lines, but I think there'll be more switches with the D.
At this rate, I agree with that. Let's talk about the forwards for a little bit here because I think you bring up if we're really going on the pace that we're talking about, and even though they're saying January, I would not. Nobody listening to this should expect the season to start on January 1st. If it does even start in January, it's going to be mid to late January.
And just to go off that too, real quick, they did say that the only way it does start on January 1st is if they get the plan out and official by the end of November. So they're pretty much 7-8 days now since this is being recorded on the 23rd.
So there's a good chance of that. But so the whole point though is that we're talking about Lindblom recovering and Patrick recovering. I mean, this is extra recovery previous. You know what I mean? Like we're already talking about going into January. Most people thought we might have the season in by November, December. We talked about January. But then that was kind of like, last-ditch effort. Now it looks like we're probably rolling to the end, if not February at this point, right? So we have to realize this is extra time for recovery for a lot of these guys and development. So I would expect a more positive outlook when it comes to people's health. I mean, there's the chance of getting injured in training and all that stuff, obviously. But Patrick needed the time. They gave him extra time. It's a head injury as well. So, I'm pretty optimistic about it. And with Lindblom, I mean, after seeing him play, I mean, I just don't doubt it that much anymore. I don't know if he'll ever come back to 100% what he was going to be, but he's coming back.
I think the thing is just his physical form. Is he's able to get back to that like 100% physical form.
Probably not within a year.
Right.
You know,
Over
maybe
time.
within 2. Yeah, it might stagnate his development. But the same way, like Sam Warren's career is not over,
Right.
but he's still going to stagnate for a while. It's going to be a lot harder for him to make the pros. Even if he doesn't make the pros here in the NHL level, he can do AHL or what's up?
He'll definitely play on another NHL team.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely has more opportunities. Even if he could still play for the Flyers. It's just really a lot depends on what happens during camp, man. We don't have it.
And then he did say he has to play at least 60 games in the AHL.
That's the thing. He's got to play in the Phantom. So there's so many like injury questions with that. Like I understand why people stop thinking about Sam Warren. And there's another big group of young, talented, players coming in.
And
so it's,
one guy we didn't even mention for the deal was Zamola. I mean, he could make the team out of camp too.
Talent-wise, yes. Likelihood, probably not.
But he could. You never know.
I would say yes to that. But he'd have to show that, like, because think about it, contractually, it's not possible right now, right? Because what do you do with these contracts? Now, could Zamula end up in the NHL and ghost in the minors? It's possible, unlikely.
If Ghost didn't demand a trade after that, I don't know what he would do.
Yeah. Well, and even then, Zamula wouldn't really be playing his prime minutes, which is. You want to be playing power play time. So I really think it's very slim. But to your point, skill-wise, he probably has it. He's just, I don't know if he's as two-way as a guy like York would be. Where if you brought York in, and even if he didn't play...
He is.
You think he is as good defensively as York?
Yeah.
I don't see that at this point. But we'll see.
I mean, I should rephrase that. Not as good as York, but I still think he's a very good two-way defenseman.
I think I'm not saying he's going to be a one-dimensional guy, but I again, if I'm seeing York, again, potential here, but I do think he potentially is a number one defenseman. It's just not as likely as a guy like Provorov, where you're like, whoa. But York would have to, like, is he Brian Leach or Ryan Suter? I don't know yet. Roman Yossi, I don't know. 200 project. Very good one, though. Exactly, but these are number one defensemen, right? Is that what? No, but he could potentially get there too, because again, he's half a year younger than everybody, and that's the one caveat that I throw out there when I see him doing what he's doing, and I know he's 6 months behind. I'm like, but that means he could still be a little bit better.
Right. I mean, I've said this before. I mean, last year he was again the youngest defenseman on USA in the World Juniors, and he was also injured, and he quarterbacked their second power play unit.
Yeah. And he also, I think he broke their record for points, right? 65 points.
Not with the World Juniors. I think it was with the development.
No, not World Junior, with the U.S. program.
Yeah.
I was talking World Juniors. I'm sorry.
No.
I thought you were talking about U.S. development program. But that's awesome. Good tidbit there. My bad. Okay. So let's move on to the forwards here a little bit. We touched on it. So what I was trying to say to you is I'm expecting Patrick back. I'm expecting him to play third line center. My thoughts are still pretty straightforward. I think they'll mix around with a bunch of stuff like you said, but they'll probably start off with a similar combination of what we expect, and then maybe branch out from there. And maybe that's where they'll get creative off of that. What do you think about the forwards?
And that's the thing. I feel like there's really no set line for me. I think honestly, I think the only guys that they have together are literally going to be Hayes and Konechny. They're the only two I think that will constantly play with each other every night. That's
Giroux and Coots?
Maybe. I mean, yeah, I think that too. I think the thing is that you have to put in perspective though is that they maybe if somebody's hurt or something like that, they might have to throw G in the center position then. I mean, in the playoffs we did see Giroux at the 3C at times, because they kind of needed some center depth and wanted to change it up on offense, but. I don't know. I mean, those are probably the only two, honestly. Probably G with Couturier and Hayes with Konechny. That's probably it.
I guess the X factors in that is not even so much Patrick, how you're like, yeah, you can pencil him into third line center, and you're pretty sure that's where he's going to be. But then you have guys like Farabee and Lindblom where you really don't know. Because,
and
what if Farabee just gets much better?
I think he's going to be honest with you.
But, what if it happens sooner than they expect, and you're like, You know, like he's like, and then all of a sudden Lindblom's on the third line.
Yeah.
And not because Lindblom isn't as good, just because like
he's playing better. Yeah. Right. I mean, Frost played first line for at times last year. He was playing with.
That was so interesting. Yeah, we've talked about that a bunch. It's so interesting how that line did well. Because on paper, you would not. Just three playmakers playing together, all undersized.
Yeah. All of them are like smaller, from like the range of like 5'6" to like 5'10", and they're all like playing well. And like
they're all the same height. I think they're 5'10".
Yeah.
Maybe Frost might be 6 foot, but they're all between 5'10" and 6 foot. But they're all slightly undersized.
Yeah.
And they're all undersized.
Are kind of like the same, like speed wise. None of them are like super fast.
Frost is. No, they are. I would say Konechny's pretty fast. Giroux used to be fast. Yeah. And I think Frost, we will see probably this year, is that he is definitely the fastest skater on this team.
Yeah.
And he's going to be burning people, and he's going to be a serious weapon offensively.
And kind of just going off what you said with Patrick, too, do you think there's any way that he could play second line center at one point if he's playing better, and they can maybe put Hayes at the third C then?
Personally, I would be interested in putting him top line center with Voracek and Giroux or Konechny instead of Voracek. I would love to see that type of combination. Call it the first, call it the second line, whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's possible to mix him in for sure. Even a Lindblom.
Could you imagine having Patrick on your second line now?
I mean, but it's not. What is the second line? What is the second line? Think about who his line mates are.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, I don't know. It's more like Hayes gets demoted in that sequence offensively, but he'll take a bigger defensive role.
No.
I don't know.
I wasn't saying that like negatively. I was saying that like how good they'd be if Coots was on that second line.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Right.
Well, realistically, I would agree with you, though. It would be more like they wouldn't leap off of where Patrick is right now in the injury and the time off and all that, right? You're not going to leap to say he's going to take top line center, right? But you could if he moves up to second line center. Yeah. I do think things get interesting regardless, because you talk about playing him with Konechny and Lindblom. That's a line that we have seen in the past, and one that could grow together.
And it makes me think, I wonder if they maybe, like, if they have it, like, set lines, like, first, second, third, fourth, obviously we know that, but, like, maybe they just keep the ice time, like, similar with, like, the first two. Like, they kind of, like, all those six players, like, around the same minutes or something.
That typically is what happens. The minute differences are usually in the special teams.
Special teams, yeah.
Right? Because you have your top six and you rotate. That's what I was saying about the top four defensemen, right? If you put Sanheim and Provorov together, the reliability of having the other pairing come out and be almost as reliable as Provorov, and you rotate them, right? Because they're not playing the whole game. They're only playing 45-second shifts, essentially, 45 seconds to a minute. You really want 2 minutes of sustained consistency, right? You really want 4 lines of offense, ideally, right? But if you can have a top 9 that scores and a fourth line that really can kill and be a shutdown line, that's what you're talking about, right? Because constantly want to rotate, and the minute difference, a lot of that is special teams. That's why some night you'll see a bottom six forward excel in the minutes department. You're like, yo, why did he outplay, or why did he play as much as Giroux? Because the Flyers killed penalties for the entire games, and Giroux had 1 power play opportunity for 20 seconds.
That's why everybody was complaining about Thompson in the playoffs.
Yeah, because he played PK all the time, and he's playing a lot of defensive zone draws.
Yeah. And he was overplayed percentage out of the whole team.
He was. Listen, I don't think he did a good job role, but I will say I do believe he was slightly overplayed. Not too much, but that's what AV does. He rotates 4 lines. But when we were losing, he didn't adjust to that, and that's a little frustrating. But again, it's more of a lack of a fourth line capable of playing AV's system. Right,
and that's the thing. I think a lot of times we saw the fourth line with the third defensive pair, and that didn't necessarily bode well because they could get scored. Like there's a handful of times they had gotten scored on like that.
Let's talk about the fourth line, because that's not set in stone at all. Whatsoever. 3 of those players were not re-signed. 3 guys who are playing on our fourth line by the end of the year were not re-signed. So that leaves that fourth line is just open. Now, could Lawton be the center there with Raffle and Albay Kubel?
I don't think Lawton's a fourth line player anymore.
But,
to be honest.
Yeah, but if everybody's healthy, then who plays fourth line center?
Maybe Bunneman.
Bunneman, who is Bunneman beating out in the lineup? Here, let me list the lineup for you with Lawton at fourth line center. Top line, I'm just throwing these out. Giroux, Couturier, Voracek. Second line, Farabee, let's say Lindblom. We'll say Lindblom, Hayes, TK. Third line, JVR, Patrick, Farabee. Fourth line, Raffle, Lawton, Albay Kubel. That's assuming everybody's healthy. Now, again, that's in question, right? So I agree with you, right? If there's no third line center, does Lawton move up and take that? He's not a fourth line player, but he's a very good fourth line center.
Yeah.
And that lineup, because you look at Albay Kubel, you wouldn't say he's necessarily pure fourth line or even Raffle, but that's a fourth line
really,
that can do everything.
That I would switch just off of that is if
JVR
isn't playing good, I would just move him down and put Lawton up. But
then who plays center? Raffle.
Right. Raffle. Yeah, Raffle. Mm-hmm.
I could see it. See it. I would say that's a bad scenario for the Flyers because they're paying JVR $7 million a year. So I would hope that he could add there. But maybe JVR will move around. We don't know what's going to happen. For all the crap we give him, he's still one of the best goal scorers on the team.
Yeah, he is.
So we have to be aware.
Good at front of the power play too.
Right, exactly.
Probably the best on the team at it.
And we don't know what's going to happen. And he's big and strong. And we don't have enough big and strong veterans. No. So again, we don't know what's going to happen. But that's why I say the question, because we know we have other guys. Bunneman, Lisinski, right? These are two guys.
Maybe.
Rubtsov. Wade Allison, definitely, but he can't play center, right? Like
these are Frost.
Right, you have Frost, right? We didn't even mention Frost. He's the most talented of the group, right?
Right.
And that could be the backup for Patrick. So we don't, and then that means Lawton drops anyway, right? Potentially.
Maybe. And that's the thing. I like the center depth is through the roof because you have a guy who's pretty much played winger his whole career in Raffle to play center. I mean, they pretty much transformed him into a center wing. Farabee could, if he could take faceoffs. He's pretty much already a center wing.
I mean, that was my thing when Farabee was coming in. I said he reminds me like he's got that Giroux-like ability to convert to center. I don't think they're going to do it, though, just because they have other centers. But we'll see. I mean, it would be interesting if he developed into a center. And defensively and mentally, he's able to do it. He's a good enough playmaker. He's good enough all around. He's nasty enough.
Yeah, that's what I mean. His hockey IQ is good enough where he can play at center.
Yeah, but we'll see how he develops, like physically too. If he gets thicker, I don't know. Dubois, it makes a pretty fantastic center. He was a left winger all the way up until getting drafted.
Yeah.
Giroux was a right winger up until playing center. So and he's undersized too. So we don't know, man. We don't know. It's all about skill and about the player himself. But it's interesting just because the combinations are almost endless, and I feel like the amount of time that we're going to here, it's like there are some wild cards there. I do expect kind of what we said because all the coaching staff will be the same, the rosters will be the same, and it's not like the players have been playing, in other leagues. It's not a lockout,
Yeah, and kind of just going off that too, I feel like really who else could even compete with those guys? That's really it, right? I mean, I don't really think anybody else we could see as like a huge black ace unless they have a really good.
Well, we didn't mention Sandin. Mention at all. Rubtsov, I kind of cursory mentioned. Isaac Ratcliffe, we don't know what kind of progress he's going to make. It's actually kind of insane how much depth there is. We don't even mention a guy like Wyatt Wiley, who's older than Zamula by a year. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah.
Linus Hogberg, who's already playing against men. Right. David Kasha, who's doing really well right now overseas.
And is also playing center right now.
That makes a little more sense for that league. But for him to play in the NHL, I just think it's tough with the size differences. That's the only reason I really even hesitate with Farabee is that he's so slight a frame, for Currently, I mean, his brothers are bigger than he is, so.
Right, and I think the thing we saw in the playoffs with him too is he was just beat physically a lot.
Exactly.
I feel like that's why he dumped the puck in all the time.
Well, playing center is even worse, so that's why I'm saying that. All right, so let's move on here. Let's talk about some negative stuff. Let's talk about delays. You mentioned it earlier. Looks like we're streaming towards the beginning of February conversation, but there's also the issue of the players kind of having to come with an agreement with the owners, about the deferral money. Apparently asking for another 13%, I believe, is the situation. I don't blame the players for being pissed, but the reality, no matter what anybody tries to tell you, the season is definitely happening, because if they do not do this, that deferral will be larger, not smaller, and it's not going to go away. The fact remains is that they just need to come to an agreement financially and who takes the brunt of the loss up front, whether it be the owners or the players. And I think it'll probably end up with the owners winning. But I think the players will make some progress, and I think that's why we're hearing this, because they're going to hold tight and they're going to try to make as much progress as they can.
Mm-hmm. So,
what do you think, Chris?
Kind of just going off that, this is an article by Elliot Friedman. This was released on November 19th, so 4 days ago. And this is he's kind of just explaining what the negotiations are like now, and this is kind of just going off of the 10% deferral. So the players agreed to a 10% deferral for the upcoming year. So the escrow caps are 20% for 2020-21, 14 to 18%, although pretty much everybody right now is assuming that it's going to be 18 in 21-22, 10% in 22-22, 23, and then 6 for 24, 25, and 26. And then a 1-year extension will be tacked on the end of the CBA if players owe the league between 125 to 250 million after the 24-25 season, and then the cap would be and then the cap on that would be 9%. So pretty much, according to several sources, the league submitted 2 proposals, which was the first asking for changes solely to the upcoming season. So deferred compensation with the 20%, escrow to 25%, and then there was no other alterations. And then the second was a deferred compensation to be raised at 26% for next season. Escrow was not touched until 4 to 6 years of the CBA, rising from 6% to between 8.5 and 9.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me like those players really don't want to take a hit, and they're going to have to take a hit for multiple years, and they're just finding out about it.
Yeah.
And it's upsetting them.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
It makes sense because the league lost money.
Right.
And they don't project to make a profit, at least to anything that they projected prior to that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. But if they don't play, those numbers will be dramatically worse.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they could be looking at like 30, 35, 40% at that point.
I mean, if the league's not making money, you're talking about teams shutting down. You're talking about the league breaking apart.
Yeah.
I don't think we're anything close to that. I'm gonna say that right now. The only thing we're hearing right now is that the players got some really bad news. Yeah. And I'm sorry. And honestly, I'm sorry to them, and I'm sorry to anybody who has financial times right now. I know a lot of people are going through it.
Right.
But it definitely sucks. These guys already get enough of their salary taken out. A bunch more. At least it's a deferral where they will get paid that money in the future. Right. It's not great to hear. I'd be super pissed if I were them. But at least there is money coming to them in the future from it. But it's not great. Sucks.
So yeah, I mean, just like going off of it, if anybody's confused, I know it's a lot of numbers and math and everything, but so pretty much just going off of it. So what added to their anger is that several new contracts were structured to take advantage of lower escrow in the later seasons of the new agreement. So for example, 56% of Alex Petrangelo's 7-year, $61.6 million deal with Vegas is paid in the lowest escrow years of the CBA. For Torrey Krug of St. Louis, 7 years, $45.5 million, it's 52%. So that could also split by age and or the length of the contract. So it's pretty much a pay now or pay later situation.
Yeah, they're gonna have to come up with a bunch of See, now this is where it gets messy. They're going to have to come up with a bunch of stipulations that are going to account for all this stuff. This is why this stuff, and again, not shitting on Elliot Friedman. The guy is awesome at what he does. This is like, I'm not saying people shouldn't pay attention to this. You should learn it. I think it's important. I think it's awesome. Thank you, Chris, for bringing it up. Yeah. But it is kind of unfortunate that everybody has to kind of hear these negotiations publicly because it's just business numbers, and it's, unfortunately, like, they're not doing it to be mean to each other.
They're looking into it. They're just like, oh, when are we going to play? Like, you
know? I mean, that's the reality. Now all we hear is just, kind of the ugly stuff up front where it's people asking them to take money from the players, which, quite frankly, none of us want to see. Like, let's be honest, as fans, we all want the players to make money. Like, we don't care if you get these humongous contracts if you perform, right? And you never hear anybody. Well, I'm not going to say that. You hear rare amount of people complain when people perform and they get paid, right? But like, for the most part, people will leave you alone if you perform, right? We want that money makes sense to people, and it's just unfortunate, man. But I think it will delay something, but I don't think it'll be a severe delay. I think any risk to playing less games to hurting the TV contracts, any more advertisements, any kind of revenue.
The TV contract is done after this year for the NBC.
So let's talk about something positive. Actually, I want to bring this up.
Just one more thing that is positive, and this is also from this just got tweeted. Boston announced Jake DeBrusk got signed.
Nice.
It was like 3 years. But again, and this is just from the same article. So the players want to play. Several governors on last week's call with the NHL said Bettman wants to play and made it clear he wants to make it happen as soon as New Year's Day. There is a 60-game schedule in place, division-only play, Canadian Division II, in your own arenas, baseball-style, back-to-back games in the same venues, at least a week between the end of the season and the playoffs to allow for makeup games, and playoffs would start by mid-May and end by July 15th.
Okay. I think they can do it. I still think they can do July 1st if they get past November, just to be clear. I don't agree with a lot of people. And I said about the lockouts and the games and all that, I said they'd be able to pull those games off, and they did. Again, all of this stuff is doable. This is kind of why I say it sucks that people have to watch the process, but the reality is that this is how you problem solve. You throw out a bunch of stuff that makes people uncomfortable.
Right, and just the Jake DeBrusk thing, I just wanted to confirm it. It's 2 years at 3.675.
That's a good value. He's a good player.
Yeah, great player.
Well, good for them. Screw Boston. No offense. Sorry, Craig Eagles. They're our competition.
That was why I said it. It literally came up on my phone. It was like
I like Jake DeBrusk though. I like him though. That's a nice signing for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about something positive. I do think with the end of these TV contracts and the way coronavirus kind of, I would like to hope, scared the NHL straight about something that I've been complaining about for years, which is how our broadcasting of games stinks. Like, not the broadcasters, I'm not picking on people who are broadcasting games. I'm talking about the fact that I pay for NHL Game Center. I don't have a playoff option. I get blacked out by my local provider. Why? I would pay you double. I would pay double. And hey, you just lost a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
Maybe now it's time to revisit that model, realize that you could charge me directly. Now lots of people are trying to cut the cord as it is because all they watch is hockey.
And give more. They can up it and give a little bit more.
Yes. And now, I don't know if the likelihood of this happening, most likely unlikely, but maybe they can get a little bit closer to that direction, where at least they have one thing that aggregates. Like, I have to go to several different stations to watch hockey. I think it's just kind of ridiculous.
Because that's what happened with the playoffs. I mean, and it wasn't as much, but it was early on when the playoffs started. They had games from NBC, TSN, NHL Network to USA at times. I mean, I remember the Vancouver, Minnesota play-in series. That was on USA. And then you had, like, all the round-robin games were at different times. And I'm thinking that's probably what they're going to go with again, is that they're going to try to have all those games on, like, certain days if it's, like, back-to-backs and stuff. They're going to try to televise as many as possible.
I think so too. I like, that's where I think they should go down that route, but find a way to organize it better. That it doesn't feel like I'm piecemealing channels to try to figure out where the hockey games are on TV today.
Yeah.
It's like, it's getting outrageous. Like, we need a source of truth with watching these games. You see it now. Like, I do wonder, could they make more money doing it themselves in the future than going through these broadcasters? And I mean that honestly. Couldn't you become Netflix of hockey? All hockey.
Could you imagine
all hockey?
Could you imagine every game you could just go back and watch it again? And then Netflix they just like take some stuff off.
Yeah. I don't think they would make as much money. Otherwise, they'd already look into it.
But
if they can get a little close, that's what I'm saying. Could something like this at least get them closer? You know, like, I'll never forget that. At least I believe that there is the NBC app now to watch the Flyers. A big initiative behind that is because Brian Roberts couldn't watch the Flyers while traveling around the country, and he's like, "Why can't I watch my team?" He's like, "I can't watch the Flyers. I'm in Florida." And they're like, "Yeah, there's no way for you to watch it." Again, until it wakes people up and be like, "This is unacceptable."
In 2014, I was in Florida, and it was the playoffs, and I had to stream, not stream. I ended up having to find Game 3 against the Rangers, Game 4. I had to find it on TV on the Florida network. I don't know how I found it, but again, it took me. By the time I got it on, it was like the second period.
Well, at least you found it.
And that's the thing. Like, I was struggling to watch it, and then I ended up missing Game 6. But it is what it is.
It's like, why haven't we figured out a way to get this stuff into people's hands easier?
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have an opportunity now, and I think that's probably going to be looked at. And if the fact that the contract is happening right around this time, they're going to think about that as a mitigation risk.
Because again,
if we can't play, how do we make money off TV?
Right, and they're going to try to make as much money as possible. Like, why do you think they made new jerseys? And why do you think these jerseys are at like higher prices? One, because they're most likely going to be around for only 1 year, and two, they need money. So that's why.
Yes. Well, we'll probably see some creative stuff going on. I to your point.
As for just things I've seen, the Avalanche already made T-shirts, hats, hoodies, all with the Nordiques stuff to try to get more money.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if more teams did that, which would be cool because I would love to see some Flyers retro reverse shirts and hats and hoodies and all that stuff. But
I wonder if they would invest more in this. Actually, is a perfect segue. I wonder if they would invest more into NHL, like the video game.
Probably
time too.
I wish they would.
Yeah, I don't think they would either. But you can engage people like the league. You know what I mean? Like we have NHL to keep us company and like the rosters and all that while there's no hockey.
It's funny. I don't know. Like just off of personal experience. Have you ever played NBA 2K?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but you know how you can go back and you can get like those you can go and you can play as like the 2013 Miami Heat, right?
Yeah.
You can play with that team. They should do that in NHL.
Oh, I've been saying that for
you could play as like
saying that for a decade.
Flyers, right? Like, could you imagine playing as the 87 Oilers or like the 08 Red Wings?
Yeah, but I think we already said this on the podcast not too long ago. Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's actually a feature that used to be in FIFA way back in the day when I was a kid. They used to build the teams, the classic teams of like each country and like famous squads. It's an amazing idea. Now they just throw a bucket of a bunch of players together and go,
yeah, right.
Hey,
and then you gotta wait for the roster update. Like it just.
And then I gotta figure out why Bobby Clark is rated lower than other players, and I'm like, what is going on?
In 20, Bobby Clark's a 90 overall.
Yeah, he's same in 21, I believe.
Is it okay?
It's too low.
I don't have 21 yet, so
it's too low.
Yeah,
he's
at
too
least
low.
like a 93.
I think Mark Howe is like an 87.
Wow.
I was like, what? And Desjardins not even in it, from what I remember.
I had to make Desjardins on it.
Yeah. His ratings stink.
I know.
But I will say the NHL 21's ratings are okay, especially now that the season's not going. They're not really that frustrating because nothing's fluctuating, nobody's taking off, and like you got to catch up with it. But they still did a roster update the other day. But I will say, so I guess we want to talk about NHL 21 for a little bit. I do have a PS5 and one of the lucky few to get one. A ton. I've been playing more other stuff on it, but it runs smooth like butter. I mean, the menus are quicker, but I would really hope that they maybe release something to optimize it because I think it actually shows how dated NHL really is because like in comparison to some of the other engines, like the NBA 2K21, to your point, like that game looks ridiculous. The graphics and NHL 21 doesn't look anywhere near that. So it's kind of they're due.
NHL 18.
Well, that's kind of the thing is the graphics, the aesthetics really have not improved at all over the past.
It's the gameplay that
3 years. Yeah,
it's been the gameplay.
Sure, and they've added some modes, and I like the changes that they made. What?
The new Deeks.
Yeah, exactly. I like the changes they made, but really you're just getting the end of an era here. It was kind of the last year of the game. Ripped on it. That's why Madden got ripped also, because it just didn't have enough time with coronavirus, with a console launch, and having to make 2 different versions where they normally were making 1. So what we're probably going to get is, realistically, they were working on NHL 22 in the background, which is probably a new engine.
And they're most likely still working on the game now, which is why there's so many updates and stuff.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Which also delay. Yes, I would expect that as well. More fixes and hopefully a next gen patch. I don't know if you're gonna
because usually
PS5,
I feel because usually I feel like with all the new release of the jerseys, if we in a normal world if we would have bought NHL 21, all of those jerseys would already be in it. But some teams they mostly have to update it, and all those jerseys will be.
I think they have to play with them for them to be in the game.
What, the jerseys?
Yeah, the retros.
Yeah.
Don't they have to play with them to be in the game? Is that why they always release them afterwards? I could be wrong about that. I know that's the case with prospects, but
I'm not sure because I know they already updated the Senators, like with their rebrand.
Oh, okay. So maybe it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it doesn't matter.
I'm not too sure. I
don't know. I don't know. It's a guess. Okay. I know with players for sure they have to play 1 game to be in the game.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, they're going to take a bunch of prospects out of NHL for a little bit.
I would love for them to make a college portion where you can play with college teams.
I actually thought the same thing, but I feel like we're never going to get that.
Yeah. And I feel like it's because like the NCAA or EA or the NHL they
want too much money.
Yeah.
I think NCAA wants too much money. It's expensive to use all their rights.
Or they might just want their own game.
They could. I would buy an NCAA hockey game in a heartbeat. But they don't. But it's not necessary anymore. That's like an old school thing. You don't need to do that. You could literally charge $30 to have an NCAA edition to NHL 21.
Yeah, and they've done it before. I mean, like you see it with the Gretzky and the Hockey Ultimate Team stuff. They'll make it like $90 for this, and you get a bunch of stuff for Hockey Ultimate Team. But
you still get the base game. It's more of like DLC.
Yeah, right. And but that's pretty much. But that's kind of essentially what you just said, right? It would just be the addition with you get the standard game and then you get the college.
Well, if it would be tough for them. I don't know if that studio makes enough money to do that, but like FIFA would have that done.
And it makes me think if they've probably, I wonder if they've actually looked at it, but they just don't have the budget for it.
Yeah, I think they don't have the budget for it.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It's that expensive. They never even had an NCAA hockey game back in the day. They had all the other ones. They had like NCAA football and basketball, I believe baseball as well. And they never had hockey because it was never big enough. That's why I think the opportunity to build it into NHL is there, because you don't have to build a game just for NCAA, like build it into the game. But we'll see. I would pay for the edition. I would pay extra $20 just for NCAA. Can't hear you anymore. Your sound's gone. There you go. Now you're back. I can hear you. I can hear everything move. No, now you're not.
Better?
Yep, there it is.
Sorry.
It's all good. So anyway, so let's talk about the at the top. I talked about it with Jason Martinez on the last episode. I personally, like, my favorite is the Kings jersey. I think they all look cool in their own rights. I think there's some fails. I think the Ducks one is a fail, but I've seen some people like it. The thing I think is awesome is that it's different, and that there seems to be a style that applies to everybody's personality. So I think it's just a huge home run and shows why the NHL made a great decision by going with Adidas and moving on from Reebok a few years ago. What do you think, Chris? I know you got a lot to say about them.
Yeah, personally, my favorite is Washington. I love the red, the font. Oh, it just looks so nice. I really like the Flyers one, to be honest. I know some people don't like it, or they don't like the white on the sleeves, or that throws them off. But I like it. I liked it since it got leaked. I feel like probably the worst one is either Anaheim or Detroit, because I feel like they didn't. I mean, I honestly think the Ducks.
I like Detroit's, but it's boring.
It's so boring, it looks like the jersey that you get, like, if it looks like a practice jersey for like non-contact guys.
It could look. Here's the thing, though. We have to remember we have to see it all together as one. Because like, what socks are they helping? What helmet are they wearing? They have a very clean look, all white. They don't normally look like that. So like, do they have other ideas there? Are they having gray pants? Like, what's the thought going on there? So
yeah. And that's why I'm kind of like skeptical still about the Flyers, because I like it, but I really hope that they do something different with the way that they brand, like the gloves and stuff. Like, I wonder if they have white gloves with it, since it kind of fades down into white. I wonder if they do something like that.
That'd be cool.
One thing that I did mention on my podcast too, and also my video, I would love for Bauer to do like a kind of like a collaboration with like a retro theme, like Jofa helmets, where they're Bauer helmets, but they make them look like Jofa helmets.
Make them reverse.
Yeah, and they have like all like old retro like equipment and everything, or like all the goalies that wear those jerseys, they have like brown pads and stuff, or like famous pads from that era, they wore the jersey or something like that. If they wanted, they could do that, and then if they even wanted to make money off of it, they could auction all of it off. Since if some of the jerseys could be,
I think it's a good
1 year.
I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, we might get some really creative merchandise done that they can just sell to people in their homes, stuff to maybe even, to wear through the season to support the team. You couldn't pick one up at the stadium this year, so maybe they'll do more through e-commerce.
But the thing is, they said you could go in from December 1st to the 3rd at Wells Fargo from, I believe it was 11 to 2, but now I don't know if that's happening because of the city with the whole COVID shutdown and everything.
I have no idea, man.
Yeah.
Now, let's just be honest. None of us really know what's going to happen. And that's a big reason for these delays and question marks, and problem with the NHL and why it's going to cost more money. It's uncertainty, and uncertainty always has a cost, unfortunately. But you know what? There's a lot to look forward to. I don't think that this is the end. This is just kind of the difficult part of dealing with something difficult. We had to deal with it going into the playoffs as well. Remember, we all thought it wasn't going to happen. It was going to delay it, and the players didn't want to play. But it did happen, and it was awesome, and it was still the playoffs. And while it wasn't exactly what we wanted, again, vaccines, things are moving in the right direction. They're not moving in the wrong direction. And with you see these jerseys coming out. You see players signing contracts. The world is not going away. This is a hurdle. This isn't a brick wall. This isn't the end. This is just
a new beginning.
It's just problems. It's just problems. And we weren't around for the other ones, man. Like, we're pretty young, but there were going on while leagues were playing sports. Like, how did they deal with that where their players were getting drafted? Like that's real stuff, man. Like, athletes were going into the military.
Yeah, I remember, like, I was watching something on NHL Network one time that the Bruins, at the end of their season, they had 3 of their best players in, like, the 40s all got drafted into the war.
There you go.
At the end of the game, they had like a ceremony for them and stuff.
There you go, man. And that's that. Thank God that's not the position we're in, And it looks like we're gonna move past coronavirus with all these vaccines and everything. So, as I said, nothing but positivity moving forward. Chris, anything to leave us off with? Anything you want to sign off with? Any last thoughts before we end this one?
No, nothing really. I appreciate having me on. It was a good time. I enjoyed talking.
Yeah.
And again, I apologize if my voice was a little shot for some people.
No, we still went the full hour. We said we wouldn't talk too much, but it didn't matter. We talked too much anyway.
Oh, well.
Yeah, no, it totally paid off. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it, and I don't think you're very, very professional, deep baritone voice. So to all of our listeners, thank you so much for listening and supporting us, even all these weird times, and thank you to everybody who bought stuff. Ryan Renardi, he bought some stuff. That's awesome. Steele bought stuff. People are buying stuff. We see you guys in the comments and all that. We notice. It's amazing. It's I never imagined people would buy anything with a logo I created, especially one that I just created, at home in my living room. You always think you have to work for a company to get to that point, but it's been cool. It's been fun. So thank you everybody for the support. I hope you're all doing well out there. I do have a video series coming out. Left wing rankings will be first. But I'm going to be doing by position of all the Flyers young guns. It's between the years of 2014 to 2020, so about a 6-year window there of young players who have been developing. Check that out. It's going to come out periodically over the holidays, over about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I'll release a new episode every couple of days. So look forward to it. Have a great holiday, everybody. A great Thanksgiving, and you too as well, buddy. I'm sure I'll talk to you during Thanksgiving. But thank you again, everybody. And remember to always stay gritty.